the queens are very quick to embrace that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And there's a lot of fun in seeing them realize that all of these individual enemies are all coming together, and that kind of draws them closer together. So that's, I think, a very fun theme you'll see manifesting in the episodes to come.
Hi, Brennan.
Hello, how's it going, Caitlin? Hell yeah, rocking the merch. Let's go.
Oh my God, I love this season. I have watched the first episode like 3 times.
Oh my God, that makes me so happy. Caitlin, that came out 2 days ago. Oh my goodness.
It's so fun.
Oh, thank you. It makes me so happy to hear.
And you look fantastic in it. Did Izzy help you with your look?
The look was managed by 2 incredible professionals. Denise Valentine, who's our head of hair and makeup, our key hair and makeup artist at Dimension 20. She is a day one Dropout original. I've known her for almost 6 years now. And she's just phenomenal. She's been a day one D20 original. And Jenny Newman, our amazing costume designer, who her work is all over the TTRPG space. She's phenomenal. So they put together the costume and the makeup and the look and everything, and it was a joy.
I loved it so much. And it's such a funny, like, dichotomy going from the Ravening War into this.
Yes. Incredibly serious, eldritch horror, combat, war. And now here we are with Alaska, Monet, Jujubee, and Bob. How about it?
I love it. What did you learn from the experience of playing in a world you had created that you took into this with, like, that kind of changed your world building style?
You know, it was funny when we were doing character creation, we knew this was one of those seasons where we knew the cast before we knew the world. So we were talking about going to the cast and basically saying it's dealer's choice, like whatever kind of world you want to play in. And I had this hunch from just having run games for a lot of people. I was like, dollars to donuts, right? We're going to go in there and we're going to offer them this sort of variety of worlds to play in. And some of them we're going to offer are like, do you want like a fantastical drag setting? Do you want it to be like Drag Race, but with magic? I said, dollars to donuts, they're going to go, I want classic D&D. And I was exactly right. We went and talked to them, and all of them, of course, love drag. It's their entire life. They're the best drag performers in the world. But it's also like your day job, right? Like you could talk to anybody who's at the top of their artistic craft, and what they wanted was to do D&D. They're like, I want to be an elf. I want to be a sorcerer. I want to be a barbarian, right? People want to be these classic things and participate. So, we talked with Rick Perry, our amazing creative producer and production designer, and we're sort of talking about the look of the setting, what kind of setting it should be. And I remember going like, one thing, because people think of Dungeons and Dragons and drag performance as being very different, but there are shared pieces of DNA between these 2 art forms, between these two cultures and communities. And one of them is camp. Camp is a huge, important part of both. And the campiest D&D stuff is the old school. So you had a bunch of the world's best drag queens saying, we want the classic D&D experience. And when you go to classic D&D and you get the stuff like, the cover of the old AD&D player's handbook with the incredibly oiled up barbarian that has like lats and obliques that are all baby oiled. And you're like, why did you put on baby oil before going to a dungeon? Why don't you have a shirt on? You're unarmored. You have a horned helmet. You look like Fabio. And it's like the kind of fantasy world that you would see spray painted on the side of a van in like the 1970s with like a bunch of stoners driving around with like a muscular wizard on like a Pegasus with, golden lightning going everywhere. That is camp. And it's like, so we made that classical, almost Conan the Barbarian swords and sorcery kind of fantasy world, specifically to be the classic D&D experience that the queens were asking for, while also kind of providing a look and tone that they would hopefully find a lot of comfort and familiarity in, because it's so extravagant and campy and over the top.
I think it's so much fun. I love all the characters. I was curious, was there anything you took from Matt's style after playing with him that you brought into your own DM style?
Matt's DM style has been informing like everybody in the world's DMing style for years. I mean, Matt's imprint on the game is like undeniable and so hugely influential. And also Matt, by the way, unrelated, huge fan of Drag Race. Matt Mercer, an enormous fan of drag. So it was I got very sweet messages actually from Marisha as well about about the season and how exciting it is. But in terms of the style for this game, this one actually I think is way more influenced by experiences running games for new players in my youth. So that's actually really the thing I was leaning on more than anything, was like my experiences as a camp counselor, taking people who had never played the game before, running it for them for the first time. And also it's a very comedic setting. Like, these are some of the best comedy queens in the world. So a lot of also like experiences running games for improvisers at UCB. That's sort of like where the experience is being drawn from, I think.
I loved how you would roll with like their choices and jokes, like the fact that Twyla just fully thinks she can go invisible and can't, and that has become a running bit, is one of my favorite things.
It's so fun. Well, it's very, because I feel like that you have to keep the forward momentum going, but people are also learning the rules for the first time. So having that flexibility and fluidity to kind of move with the tide as new pieces of information are being discovered, it's really, really significant.
Yeah, I love how you introduce players into the game. I think it's so fun. Was there anything you learned? Because they're kind of a different performing style than we normally see. Did you learn anything from playing with them that you would want to bring into your future games?
The queens are so incredibly talented, so funny, so engaging. I think that like what they brought, the impact that they brought for me was getting to go back, because I've been playing with such incredible players for so long. They're so familiar with the game. And one of my favorite experiences is getting to watch people fall in love with the game for the first time and seeing that at the table, and kind of having a season now that it's very short. It's only 4 episodes, and you get to watch these incredibly talented performers fall in love with the game and also learn the game for the first time. So I feel like the impact that they had on me is like, we now have this season of the show that, like, yes, it's like it's Dungeons and Drag Queens. You know, we're all in these amazing costumes. It's this wild fantasy adventure. But I almost think that like it's kind of going to be my go-to season now for, like, if you really have no idea what D&D is, come and watch this season and see for the first time these people learning the rules in front of you. It reminded me in a lot of awesome ways about Fantasy High freshman year, where like Allie's learning the game for the first time. And it made me go, oh, there's something really beautiful in watching that play out, watching that experience play out.
I completely was thinking of that when I was watching it. It's that perfect fun, especially when you could see them really click into the game, like with Princess punching the goblin or snapping Wallace's spine.
Incredible, truly incredible. Blam.
So violent, so quick.
Yeah. So funny. Oh my God. I love it. But it's great. It's exactly what Alaska should have done. And it's everywhere. Like that's the dream. That's the promise of D&D. I'm going to go to a tavern. I'm going to meet someone annoying. I'm going to punch them through a window. Great. Here we go. We're playing, baby. We're doing it.
Can you tease a little bit of what we're going to see with this larger conspiracy that seems to be at play? Because it seems like a lot of their enemies are kind of connected.
Well, I think that we're seeing a lot of that play out. And, you know, we ended the last episode. They're heading into the underworld. And I think there's going to be a really fun, now that they're all kind of together and seeing that, you know, I won't, without spoiling anything, I will say, the queens are very quick to embrace that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And there's a lot of fun in seeing them realize that all of these individual enemies are all coming together, and that kind of draws them closer together. So that's, I think, a very fun theme you'll see manifesting in the episodes to come.
I love it. And then I love the hints we got to Gertrude's storyline, where her reasoning for wanting to go to the end of the world is completely different than everyone else's. What would it like to build that kind of character arc for her versus the other ones where it's very like, I have a mission or I'm taking vengeance?
It was beautiful. And it's all Bob. It's all Bob. Bob came fully formed with that quest and that idea. And, you know, he's just so wildly talented and wonderful. Bob, by the way, also the person who suggested the look I ended up with in the season. It was because that was an early conversation that we had with the queens. It was really wonderful, where I was like, hey, what's my best way to support you in terms of like, what are the looks that you're going to be coming with? How do I best support all of you? Do you guys want me in drag? Do you guys want me in normal button up? Like, what is it? What's going to make you feel the best at the table? And Bob said this thing that was, I think, really impactful of what is your drag? Like, our drag is this very high, high femme thing. It has the big hair and the big whatever, but that's not necessarily your drag, and drag can be anything. And so sort of talked through the idea of being this like half elven adventurer kind of character. And very, very awesome. Bob is a truly unique performer, incredibly gifted storyteller. I can't wait for people to see where Bob is going to go this season.
I love that. And then what surprised you the most about this season compared to the other seasons you've done?
It wasn't a surprise, but I was blown away. I mean, I was not surprised because I knew how talented these four were. I was still blown away by how fearlessly they dove into a completely new experience and excelled with flying colors. It was really remarkable.
I also love that this came out at the end of Pride Month. That made me so happy.
Let's go.
Because one of the things I love about D&D, and I think Erica Ishii has talked about it before, is like a lot of LGBTQ kids that play kind of start figuring out their identity through it. So I thought it was very cool, especially like when the queens were talking about it on Adventuring Party and getting to kind of tap into stuff that they thought about when they were kids. What was the most fun part of that for you in bringing them into this world?
The power of this game, and specifically, I have so many friends and loved ones who have said some version of like, my characters were into women before I was, or my character was a woman before I realized that I was, like that's a huge part of like tabletop and role-playing experiences for people. And I think that, Dropout are our core values, our beliefs, our ideals are all right out there in the public square for anyone who wants to engage with them. And I think showing not only our belief in the talent of and our passion and joy for drag as a performance art, but also showing our solidarity and support for that community, which is us and our community. We have so many LGBTQ people that are both in front of and behind the camera, and our community is eternally devoted to standing in and with and beside and amongst them forever and ever.
Getting to kind of go back to the OG Dungeons and Dragons, because one of the things that's great about Dropout is how it mixes genres, but this is very cool because it mixes like drag with this OG Dungeons and Dragons. What for you was kind of like your favorite part of returning to that type of D&D versus the different ones that you've done a lot of times?
Ease. EASE, ease. That's my briar patch that I was born and bred in. I can't tell you how easy it is to make stuff up in those worlds. I have a program in the middle of my brain. You hit click and it goes on and it goes, high fantasy. And then a bunch of stuff comes out. It's great. So my favorite part, when people are like, we want a straight down the middle high fantasy experience. And I go, oh, well, this is okay, great. Give me 20 minutes. I'll be back. This is, no worries. That's truly a lovely part of it, was being so in my lane to give an experience to these queens who wanted something classic. And that's the world I grew up in. So it was very fun to be able to provide that and to be able to do so quite expeditiously.
I do want to shift gears for 1 second because I'm also a huge Critical Role fan. Did you warn Matt about Emily Oxford, or did you let him go into that blind?
Listen, the only warning I would have to give is that she's one of the greatest D&D players that has ever lived on this planet. And the reason that she is so highly sought after as a D&D player and is played in all of the biggest, D&D shows is because she's her talent, her gift for storytelling, all of it is just so undeniable. She is a gift at every table that she plays at. So I'm very glad that Matt got the opportunity to play with one of the all-time goats of actual play D&D performance.
I loved when she popped on. I was like, oh, we're going to get Hilda in Critical Role. Let's go.
Let's go. It's very fun. I was just recording with Emily, and it was very fun that she was talking about the difference between the going to Critical Role and having those experiences there. And it's just, there's so many fun different tables and opportunities offered within the actual play space. So I'm so glad for Critical Role fans to get to see Emily Axford and see all of the amazing stuff that she is capable of doing. It's awesome.
Yeah, I very much lost my mind when she popped up. That was so great. And then with the I know you wanted to tap into the OG D&D stuff in the high fantasy, but what was it about the underworld specifically that drew you to that aspect of it?
What drew me to the underworld aspect of it?
Yeah.
Truly, Caitlin, I'm going to tell you something really dumb. Just the pun death drop. That's it. That's why.
Amazing.
That was literally it. It's like, because high fantasy, there's so many locations you can go to, but thinking about, there's the thing that really inspired my kind of thinking was I used to play this board game called Hero Quest that's very much in the vein of this kind of world we're living in. It's like dungeons, the underworld, going into the ground. It's like such a classic fantasy thing. And then I was like, the underworld dungeon, like as a big purple rocky dungeon kind of place. And then thought about dropping into that. And I went, dropping into death. Okay, here we go. Let's do it. And the rest, as they say, is history. It was just a joke that made me laugh a little bit one time. And then we did a whole giant shoot about it. And that's how it goes over at Dimension 20.
That's the best thing I've ever heard. A pun got you there. That's perfect.
Exactly.
What was one of your favorite dynamics to play? Because in the first episode, there are so many fun ones like Twyla and Alvin and Troyan and her mother. Like, what were some of your favorites with that?
Honestly, any of the dynamics that I was playing at the table had to take a backseat to just the incredible chemistry between these queens. Like watching like Bob and Monet antagonize each other, watching them all do the little sort of like take these shots and do these bits. It's just really, really funny. They're all so incredibly talented as comedians. But I think that like the relationship between the NPCs was really, really fun. Loved Bump Williams and Princess. Loved Alvin and Twyla. It was all deeply, deeply gratifying. But I would say too that just even walking through narrations and doing the narrations of spell casting and magic and stuff like that, because that's all second nature, and it moves through that filming. But just having people at the table where I'm starting to narrate a spell and looking at these four, it was such a funny thing to just improvise the description of a spell and have like Jujubee go at a narration of a spell. And I look and be like, I've watched you do a triple backflip into a split and glitter pops out of your wig. Why am I, you're giving me a level of wow, man, that was incredible. I'm just talking. I'm literally just constructing sentences in English. And I've seen everyone here do things that I would describe as physically impossible. So it was very fun. Having the queens were all very, very kind in terms of their experience of the show. And especially coming from people who I've seen do feats of performance that stagger the mind and leave the brain reeling in disbelief. It was very, very meaningful.
I will say two things. One, I think Jujubee's reactions are one of my favorite parts of the season.
It's great, isn't it?
I want to see more of them. And two, the fact that you described creating a world as just putting sentences together is maddening, just so you're aware. You're like, everyone can do this. Why is this special? No, sir, that's not true.
Well, dang. Thanks, Caitlin.
That just to me, when you were like, it was so funny to me because I'm like, excuse me, I watch a lot of professional D&D play, DMs and players and everything. That's not true. Come on.
Hey, you gotta stay humble. You gotta stay humble. But I deeply appreciate it. It's a real honor working with all of them, and it's very deeply meaningful. And I just hope that people that I hope that Dimension 20 fans go check out all of these queens' amazing work. Go see them live and in person. Go see their shows and their tours. Go watch Drag Race. They're incredible. And I hope that for people that are discovering Dimension 20 for the first time that are fans of these queens, that you feel really welcome in this space and get to fall in love with an amazing type of storytelling.
Oh, it's so fun because I've literally been able to introduce some of my friends to Dimension 20 through this, because one of my best friends, his D&D campaign did an impromptu drag brunch in game.
Oh, so my God.
I at least sent the trailer of this. I'm like, send this to all of your players. Like, you're going to love this.
Oh my God. That's so good. It makes me really happy to hear that people feel invited. They should. You want them to.
I love it. And then what was kind of maybe a moment that was improvised by them that really was there a moment that really shifted the game for you where you kind of had to almost change the direction you were expecting to go in because of a decision that they made?
Was not expecting famed American music producer Mark Ronson to die in the show. Was not expecting Earth to be real. Was not expecting any of that. That was all very new information. But it's wonderful. And listen, you know, if you've played with Allie Beardsley as much as I have, you have to be ready at the drop of a hat for some arcane piece of modern Americana pop culture lore to show up in your fantasy world. So, you know, when Mark got there and Paula Abdul was not far behind, I was ready.
Thank you for this.
Yeah, thank you for this gift. Yes, and that's what we say. So that was surprising to say the least, but it was, of course, perfect and wonderful. And we had to roll with it.
I love it. I also just love the moment where you have Twyla saying, "I'm here to avenge my people," and then Princess going, "Yeah, me too."
You know, that's going to happen from time to time. That's going to happen.
That felt so true to D&D for me because, of course, multiple people's motivation is vengeance.
Yes.
But also, of course, because they're adventurers, they don't have this big, grand way of expressing that necessarily.
Well, it's interesting. I think you'll see as the episodes go along that there are subtle, like, yes, both of them have experienced loss and grief, but I think there's very much like, you know, Twyla is carrying the seed of the All Blossom and still has this sort of potential to be the savior of her. There's a last bitter hope there that she's holding on to. Whereas I think Princess's story is a little bit more bloodthirsty. There's a classic revenge storyline there. So you wait and see, but I think it's very gripping. But yes, it's first people, you know, it was a little flashback to LARP camp when I used to run, and then we'd have a team of all loners. Everyone would be a loner. And you go, well, we can't, if we're all loners, how are we on this team together? You know, a bunch of 11-year-olds that are all raised by wolves.
My favorite stories you've ever told about a LARP experience is the kid who was avenging his wolf parents, not his human parents.
Yes, only the wolf parents are getting avenged. I would say, if you have an 11-person team in a LARP game, 4 of them have wolf parents. You know, there's just classes. There's backstories we all want. They're popular. You know, there are best-selling backstories.
I love it. This season is so good. They're all so funny, and I love when they really kind of immerse themselves into it. I thought that was so great. I am curious because you kind of talked about a little bit in Adventuring Party. Are there any pieces of backstory that you weren't able to get into for these characters that you really would have wanted to?
No, I think thankfully the 4 people at the table. Also, you know, I've made enough seasons of the show to kind of have a good estimation of like what's possible to get in and what's not. And I think that like my answer, the reason I got everything was because I made my first priority be the character's backstory, and fundamentally, like, you know, part of the reason this conspiracy is all made up of these characters from their backstory is to ensure that we get their backstory in there, right? Rather, I think like for any DMs that want advice, if you're doing a one shot or you're doing a four episode miniseries or something like that, and you have characters that want backstory and villains and nemesis, that's the plot. Don't even include your own plot. Don't be like, yeah, each of your nemesis, but also this guy that's my guy that I think you should fight. It's like, you know, honestly, when they made their backstories, a big part of me was like, great, that's the story. Thank you. There we go. Once again, ease.
It's so great. I can't wait for the rest of the episodes. I'm so excited. And I love Dimension 20. It's just like my comfort D&D show. It's so other than Crown of Candy and Ravening War, which scarred me. So thank you for that. But it's just
you're welcome. You are welcome. There you go.
Garbage disposal? Not okay.
Yeah. Disposal. Well, dang. Thank you so much for the kind words, Caitlin. I really appreciate it.
I love it. I can't wait for more people and more episodes. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Of course. Thank you so much, Caitlin. Be well, and we'll talk soon.